What's up, besties and homies? It's your girl Asia checking in back with another video. If you're new to the channel, welcome to Strong Friends Check-In Podcast. So I want to talk a little bit about the chosen ones. I think there's a lot of confusion surrounding the chosen ones. Who are they? What does that mean? So let's talk about it. I'll start by saying that being chosen or favored by God is not an enviable position. It's interesting to see so many people get triggered when someone is identified as being special or favored or chosen by God, because that lets me know that they don't understand what that means. While it is an honor, it is not a position that I would envy if I was on the outside looking in. First of all, the chosen ones have a heavy cross to bear, because oftentimes we're born into dysfunctional families. We're born into strange environments. Now, the Word of God says that we're all born into sin, and it's referring to the environment. However, the chosen ones typically have a much challenging childhood than the average person. So we're set apart from birth. And what I mean by that is we're born into dynamics in which we have to be more mature, more emotionally intelligent, and oftentimes more responsible than the adults in the situation. And so we learn early in life to operate at a higher level of consciousness. We have to. It is really sort of a survival skill, because we had to endure pressures during childhood that really no child should have to experience, because we should have been allowed to just be free and enjoy our childhood. But life wasn't set up for us that way. So because we operate at a higher level of consciousness, oftentimes the chosen ones become the scapegoats of their family. Witches and warlocks, as I've said before, target the chosen one or the special one because they have the potential to break generational curses. They see that that child has a light and they don't like the light. Demons don't like light. So in addition to being set apart from birth or chosen by God from birth, we're then set apart when family members target us for being different. So we already feel different. We know we're different. We feel different. We may not have the vocabulary to really explain what we feel, right? And then we're targeted by members of our family, oftentimes so-called elders, people that we should be able to look up to and depend on, people who should support us and help us to grow and develop during those years. We're being targeted by those individuals. And oftentimes we have to develop skills, relationship skills early in childhood, because we're surrounded by adults who lack those skills. And so we kind of take on the role of parent. We take on the role of the elder. So it's really not an enviable position, because although we can hear from God, God speaks to us, we're operating at a higher level of consciousness, it comes with a lot of pressure and a lot of pain and a lot of turmoil. The Bible says, to whom much is given, much is required. And that means when God imparts more wisdom to you or blesses you with more of anything, he's going to require more of you, because now you know. When you know better, He expects you to do better. So being chosen is a responsibility. It's a calling. There are huge assignments attached to that title. It's not just a title or not just something that people say to brag. And for the longest time, people wouldn't say it, but I say it because I'm not ever going to be ashamed of who I am. And I talk about that a lot too. You know, children of God need to stop being timid and allowing the world to bully them into hiding. That's the trick of the enemy. The enemy wants you to hide. The enemy wants you to be ashamed of the calling that God has placed on your life. It's a way for the enemy to quiet you. Because if someone can convince you that stating who you are and standing fully in who God has called you to be is wrong, then the enemy can convince you that speaking the gospel is wrong, because truth is truth. So if I'm ashamed to speak one truth, then the enemy can make me ashamed to speak the truth. So I just tell it like it is. You know, I am who I am, and I don't apologize for that. I thank God for making me everything that I am. I'm grateful for how he made me. But I want to talk more about the chosen ones being set apart, because that translates over into adulthood as well, and specifically relationship status. And that's why I posted the episode about she's single because she's set apart. I posted that message to women like me who are single because they're set apart. There are Black women who are single because they are set apart. What do I mean by that? So we know that life is a journey. We know that it's all about growth and development. So before you really come into the full knowledge of who you are, and before you really have that meeting with God, the Most High God, you know, the meeting that pivots you in life, you might be able to fit in to some spaces. For example, people know you're special. People know you. And as a matter of fact, before you come into the full knowledge of yourself, the people around you know more about you than you. In other words, they know that you're special. You might think you're different, but they know you're special. So before you come into the full knowledge of yourself, you're able to function and operate in low vibrational places because you don't know you're special. You know you're different. See, we know that from the very beginning. We know we're different. We know that, oh, there's something different about me. You know, or you might think, I'm strange. I'm a weirdo. You know, you might think like that. But oftentimes, because we operate with humility, we don't know that we're special. But the folks around us know. And of course, they don't know how special, but they have a better understanding of who we are than we do. Because we're talking about spiritual warfare, and we're talking about things that are happening in the spiritual realm. And so none of us are fully conscious. And you have to start from somewhere. And so as a child, as you're growing up, you're going through your teen years, you're starting to learn, but you really have to have a meeting with the Most High God to really understand who you are and make that pivot. So you might be in a relationship or two, right? But once you have that meeting with the Most High God and you understand how important your calling is and you understand the size of the assignment that he's giving you to fulfill, you may be single 10, 15, 20 years. Not because you're unattractive or you can't get a man. Not because you can't get a proposal or a man to marry you. Has absolutely nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with your awareness and your knowledge of who you are and whose you are. And so you know that if you, with all that God has given you, because remember, to whom much is given, much is required. You know that if you make a hasty decision and you choose a man or woman, if you're a man listening to this, who is wrong for you, someone who God has not called you to join with, you know that it could be disastrous. You know that it could be a catastrophe. You know that it could destroy everything that you've worked so hard to build. And you're not willing to take that risk. So when we talk about spiritual afflictions, we're not talking about anything shallow. I think the misconception is, especially with Black women, if a Black woman says that she's spiritually afflicted or she has been spiritually afflicted, people automatically think, oh, she must be having problems with Black men, or she's not having a good dating experience, or she's messing with a bunch of thugs. No, we don't. Again, we operate at high levels. We're not low vibrational, we're high vibrational. So when we say we're spiritually afflicted, 9 times out of 10, it's related to family. And then oftentimes it can be related to work, things that we're experiencing in the workplace or in our industry. But most of the time, those spiritual afflictions come from family. So I want people to hear me and hear me clearly. Most of my afflictions have absolutely nothing to do with my relationship with Black men. Black men have not caused me more pain and suffering than my family. Okay? So my experiences with Black men, for the most part, have been positive. I have had a couple experiences that have been negative, but for the most part, my relationships and experiences with Black men have been positive. Now, have they all turned out the way I wanted them to? No. Have I been disappointed with some of the decisions that some of my friends have made? Yes. Have I been disappointed to find out that, hey, he's not as mature as I need him to be? Yes. But that's not negative to me. That's a part of the process. That doesn't make him a bad person. And so that's the point I want to make as well. I want women to understand that dating is a process. It is a process. When you are chosen by the Most High God, you have opportunities to marry. You have opportunities to commit. However, you're very careful about that, again, because you understand what's at stake. My personal experience is that the men who have proposed to me, and I spoke about this in another video as well. You should find it in the playlist entitled Black Love. The men who have proposed to me were not bad men. However, because of the call that God has placed on my life, I know that although they think they were equipped to be my husband, they're not. God revealed to me this man is not strong enough to be the man that you would need him to be, to handle the calling that's placed on your life. For example, because of my family dynamic, I had to take care of my grandmother who had dementia. A gentleman proposed to me or talked seriously about marriage right around the time that she was diagnosed with dementia. I decided not to move forward with that because God revealed to me that he would not be strong enough to be by my side during that. He would not be able to really go through that experience with me, because caring for a dementia patient is extremely taxing. It's indescribable. I can't even describe to you how hard that is. God revealed to me that this is a part of your calling. A part of your calling is to take care of your grandmother. This man does not have what it takes to stand by your side through this. So I want people to understand that life is not always about the stupid stuff y'all see on social media. Life is so much bigger than the conversations that we're having in Black America about relationships. I don't even engage in those conversations. A lot of the stuff that I hear, nobody's ever said that to me. Like, for example, nobody's ever asked me, what do you bring to the table? I just mention it in my videos because that's what y'all are talking about. Nobody's ever asked me to do anything crazy. I'll say that. When I was fornicating, my ex never asked me to do anything. You see what I'm saying? I haven't had those experiences where a man is just asking me to do all kind of crazy stuff, or he's asking me really offensive questions. I have not had those experiences. And I think it's because of the way I carry myself. And I think it's because men know that I'm not going to tolerate that. You're not going to talk to me any kind of way. And I'm pretty sure my exes know that don't even waste your time asking me to do anything crazy. Just put it that way. Don't waste your time, because I'm not doing it. And then we'll become, that'll put a rift in our relationship, because now I feel like you're disrespecting me. So I haven't had those situations. I just talk about it because I know that that's what you all are talking about in the dating space. Now, have I experienced distancing? Yes. And I've also done the distancing. I've been on both ends of it. Have I experienced ghosting? Yes. Now, I think that's only happened like one time, maybe twice. I just can't remember the second time or the first time. I can remember the second time, if there is a first time. You know what I mean? But that hasn't really happened that much. But distancing, yes, there are some things that I've experienced. But the point that I'm trying to make is that when we talk about spiritual afflictions and we're talking about spiritual warfare, we're not talking about anything shallow. We're not talking about bad experiences with men. That's the least of our worries. I am not concerned at all about bad dating experiences. My mind is not on that, because again, when you are chosen, you have a huge assignment. My assignment is so much bigger than that. My calling is so much bigger than who I'm going to marry or who I'm dating or, anything like that. That stuff is shallow to me. That stuff is shallow. I have bigger fish to fry. So I want to make that clear, because I think when people say spiritual afflictions, people are thinking, oh, it must be black men. Absolutely not. Spiritual afflictions, let me tell you something. It's deep. Check out my video on demonic afflictions. It's part 1. Check that out. But it's deep. It starts with the environment in which you're born. It starts with that. It starts with your family dynamic. And then throughout your life, it seems to be like this theme of family members who betray you. It seems to be a theme, because in spiritual warfare, everybody picks a side. Yeah, so in spiritual warfare, everybody picks a side. Everyone must pick a side. So when we talk about spiritual afflictions, we're talking about witches and warlocks in the family, in the workplace, but it really has more to do with family members, because you got to remember, in spiritual warfare, the enemy is going to try to use the closest people to you. That's always the first, I guess, strategy. The enemy will always try to use the closest people to you. That's why all these relationships and marriages ending, due to infidelity and all this other stuff, that's the enemy. The enemy is always going to try to use your spouse, always. And that's why I can't marry a dumb man. I can't do it. I need somebody who's morally intelligent, somebody who understands that this life is so much more than what you can physically see. I don't want a man that objectifies women. When he looks at a woman, all he can see is her physical or her image. She's got spiders on her eyes and a bunch of weave in her hair, and she's got on tons of makeup all the time, and so he sees the image. She got a BBL, and he's like, oh, she bad. She bad. She a bad. I don't want nobody like that. I want somebody who's morally intelligent. I want somebody who can look at a woman, see her natural beauty, and appreciate her for all that she is, not just the size of her behind. I need somebody who is smart. I need somebody who understands that this is spiritual warfare, and the enemy is going to try to break up your marriage. Point blank and the period. The enemy is going to try to break up your marriage. So I don't need somebody who's blind or low vibrational, somebody who's just walking around with blinders on, because they're the ones who fall into those traps easily. And it's just stupid to me, because you see it happening over and over and over again, and people are still dumb enough to fall for that. The answer is you just don't talk to the person, Like if I'm married, I don't talk to strange men. It's funny because when I was working up north, this man, he was a coworker. I didn't really know him. I didn't even remember his name. He saw me entering the building one morning for work, and he was kind of far away, but I could see, a figure. And it was like, I think it was kind of like, it was foggy out. And so he lifted his hand to wave at me. And I just kept walking. I was a married woman at the time. I just kept walking. So he entered the building later that morning, And he said, "You didn't see me outside. I was waving at you." And I said, "Oh, I don't speak to strange men." And he laughed. But I meant that. As a married woman, and I really don't like to do that now, even as a single woman. I don't like to speak to strange men, but I'll speak because I am single. So it's like, you got to speak to them. That could be your kingdom husband. So open your mouth and speak, right? But as a married woman, I don't speak to strange men. I keep right on walking. I act like I don't see them. And that's the way it should be. Because when you know spiritual warfare and you understand how that works, you're going to protect your marriage. You just don't speak. You don't have to speak. That's not your husband or your wife. Keep it moving. Who cares if they think you're rude? And it's not being mean. It's just that I don't know you. And I'm a married person. So I'm just going to keep it moving. I'm going about my business, going about my day, not bothering anybody. So I say all that to say that's the way the enemy works. The enemy is always going to try to use the closest people to you first because that's the easiest method. It's easier to try to use your spouse or your parent or your child. The enemy will always try to infiltrate your family first. And unfortunately, I come from a family that for the most part, most of them are low vibrational and they don't get it. They don't get it. They don't get it. They can be easily manipulated and easily used as pawns. So that's where the spiritual affliction comes. So when you have witches and warlocks in your family, narcissists in your family who are upset because they can't control you or use you or take advantage of you, then they start moving all the chess pieces, right? But when you're chosen, you really can't be touched. I mean, you can be affected because you love your family, right? So you can be affected, your feelings can be hurt, but you can't be touched. You can't be touched. You're always, God is always going to protect you, and God is always going to vindicate you, and he's going to avenge the wrongdoing that people have done to you. He's going to avenge you. And so you just have to be patient and wait. Just grab your popcorn and sit back and watch God work, But I just really wanted to speak on the chosen ones because I think that we're misunderstood. I think even that position, people envying that. Like, listen, Linda, most of the folks who think they want to be me could not walk 2 minutes in my shoes. And that's men and women, because there have been men, even on some of these jobs, that, and of course, those men, I wouldn't consider those men as masculine, but there have been men on my job, some of my jobs that they didn't like me. They envied me. They wanted to be me. They didn't like the favor that I received from my employer. They didn't like that I was moving up. It's just, the enemy is everywhere. The enemy is busy. The enemy is busy. And spiritual warfare is real. It's a battle between good and evil. And so, I would just encourage the chosen ones to just stay focused, stay focused on your goals and what God has called you to do. Block out the noise. When you first come into the knowledge of yourself, it's a little bit more difficult to block out the noise, but you become a pro. You become a pro at blocking out the noise. You become a pro at using that gray rock method. Just turn yourself into a gray rock and be as boring as possible to get rid of the narcissists in your life. Narcissists don't like boring people. Narcissists don't like emotionalist people because they are energy vampires. So you just turn into a gray rock. Don't show any emotion. Don't look their way. Cut all contact and keep it moving and stay focused on what God has called you to do. And if you're confused about your purpose in life, pray about it. God will show you. He will lead you. He will guide you. I've said before that I never thought that I would be a teacher. I knew that I would be a businesswoman. So nonprofit, that made sense to me. Being a nonprofit executive and a grant writer, that made sense to me. But I never thought that I would become an educator. But God ordered my steps. And so now I have a lot of different skills that I can use. I'll never be without a job. And of course, I can use my skills to do other things because I'm also an independent contractor as well. So, but I just wanted to leave you with that. I want to encourage the ones who know that they're different. Maybe you know that you're special. I want to encourage you to stay the course. You know, times are going to get hard and you will face a lot of opposition because you're called to do good. And people don't like that. People don't like to be reminded of their inadequacies. And that's what you do. When you enter the room, you light up the room. And what happens when you turn the light on? Well, we know roaches scatter. But when you turn the light on, you can see, people can see things that, you know, and people can't hide. And that's the problem. So when you understand your assignment, I have a video on that too, understand your assignment. Then you just go and you do what God has called you to do. And you don't care about who likes it, who doesn't like it, you know, because you're not seeking the approval of man. You understand that man does not have a heaven or hell to put you in. And so you just do what God has called you to do, because everything, every good and perfect gift comes from the Lord, not man. Everything comes from the Lord. God is your source. So you just stay the course. And I would say to individuals who may not have come into the full knowledge of themselves yet, but kind of are curious about the unknown, I would say pray. Pray. Because prayer is your sort of your ticket into that realm. Prayer is really like a ticket into the spiritual realm. When you develop a prayer life, you can hear more from the Most High God. You begin to hear from him. And he'll lead you. He'll guide you. But I will say it's not easy. It's not easy. It's a heavy cross to bear. You've got to let people go. Sometimes, you know, when you walk in a straight and narrow path and most of your family members take the wide path, you know, it's not an easy decision to make, but it's worth it. It's worth it. And it's the same with dating. You might see a man that you like, oh my gosh, that thing is fine, you know, but you know, it's like, Lord, he's so fine. But you're like, it's not worth it. He's not the one. So that's my message. Know that you're worthy. Know that you're loved. Please like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, it's your girl, Aisha, signing off.